For our next speakers, user behavior is at the very heart of their security decision-making. I'm delighted to invite to the virtual stage two CISOs, Katerina and Ian, of two major financial services enterprises, Intertrust Group and Schroders Personal Wealth. They're here to share how they use Tessian warnings to empower their employees to make secure decisions on email, and how they use Tessian analytics to show exactly how that employee behavior improves over time.
Thank you, Kelly. I am Robyn Savage, Customer Success Lead here at Tessian, and it's now time to hear from two more of our customers on some incredibly important topics. Firstly, how to stop human error breaches by treating employees as part of the solution. And secondly, how to translate that progress back to senior management in a way that really resonates. Now, Katerina and Ian, who you'll meet in just a moment, are both brilliant CISOs who are always coming to us with new and interesting ideas for how we can keep evolving Tessian's technology to tackle new challenges. So it's fantastic to have them both here with us today, and I think we should get right to some introductions.
Thanks, Robyn. My name is Katerina Sibinovska. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer of Intertrust Group. We're a publicly listed company that provides a wide range of services in the financial sector to clients operating across the footprint of all continents, pretty much. So the headquarters is in Amsterdam, but we have more than 44 offices across the world.
Keeps you busy.
Hi. I'm Ian Bishop-Lagget. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer of Schroders Personal Wealth. Schroders Personal Wealth is a joint venture between Lloyds Banking and Schroders itself. And we were set up in 2019 to take on the personal wealth advising business out of Lloyds. And it's pretty much a startup with the engine running, and we've had to build out our entire infrastructure as a greenfield site, and it's been quite challenging and really enjoyable.
Love that. Thank you both. And Ian, you're skipping over your extensive history with Tessian before. We're talking to a Tessian veteran, having seen us from the ground up at Schroders too. So lots of interesting perspectives on this one, and I think it's going to bring loads of really sort of important insight to today's discussion. So the first topic I'm going to start us off with today is thinking about this notion of factoring human behavior into security design. Now, I think before we do that, what's really important is we step back and we actually lay out what are the human risks that we're trying to mitigate. So Ian, perhaps I come to you first here. Which human risks are your top priority at SBW to be sort of protecting against? You know, if we skip the jargon, what keeps you up at night as a CISO?
I think it's common amongst most companies is that a phishing attack and subsequently somebody clicking on a phishing email is the biggest thing. We can do an awful lot to help mitigate against that through security awareness training. But we know through testing that there are still a number of people that click on well-crafted phishing attacks, and therefore we have to have the defenses and the recovery and response mechanism in place to be able to cope with that. The second big thing is sending the wrong data to the wrong people. That has to be one of the second biggest worries, and again, putting in software that helps provide guardrails is my mantra in that area. But two probably biggest worries are human related.
Brilliant. And then Katerina, if we come to you next, I don't mean to add to the stress, but what's keeping you up at night?
Well, I can actually relate to what Ian just mentioned. And if we look at what's happening on the market, it's clear that the number of phishing emails and ransomware attacks and spear phishing are growing, right? And today the focus has shifted from office work to remote work as well. Everybody's working from home these days, so some of the risks that were not present 2 years ago, they're now becoming a top priority. So if I have to, choose one as the top risk that keeps me awake at night, I think that would be data exfiltration or data loss, if you will. And how does that relate to human is because, sometimes one click is all it takes, right? And I'm not saying that this is necessarily a malicious behavior, but it can also be because of lack of awareness or knowledge or just negligence or, the casual behavior, like you read something in the news and then you say, well, this is not something that can happen to me. And yeah, that would be the biggest risk that I see. And even lack of some technology solution these days to protect the remote work. Because as I mentioned, we were all looking at the office as a space, but now some of the focus has shifted. And humans are the weakest link, I think.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting what you referenced there and extremely pertinent, right, in that we think of bad actors. They're few and far between. We obviously have to be extremely intentional in the way that we protect for them. But ultimately, they're a rarer beast, right? Whereas the majority of our workforce are well-intentioned, hard-working people who have plenty on their plate. And as a result, sometimes mistakes happen. And that is probably the bulk of instances in which you two are having to design programs to mitigate against.
Correct.
Now, exactly. What I think would be really interesting, and Katerina, I'm going to pick up on you first here, because we had a very interesting discussion about this a few weeks ago around this notion of putting users at the center of the strategy that you put in place in order to mitigate for these risks. Now, Katerina, I remember something you said to me when I asked you this question before, and you laughed. You went, well, Robyn, I am a user. So sometimes the policies that I put in place restrict me, and that's just how I think of it. Maybe you could talk a bit more about how that mindset governs your work as CISO. I think it's such an interesting idea.
Well, look, our entire information security strategy has a human-centered concept, and human security by design it puts the user at the center of the attention. And as I mentioned, I know I try to do what's best for the company. At the same time, I know sometimes it slows me down as a user as well. But we have to make sure that we keep the correct balance between security and business continuity. We have an entire pillar of the information security strategy that we call security culture. And it's all about training and education and raising that awareness. I can't say that we can allow to 100% rely on people being aware and know what they're doing. So we also invest in technology just to add that additional layer of protection, so that it's a nice combination of technical and non-technical controls. But that doesn't mean you put some advanced threat protection tools and you block the malicious links. That doesn't mean people can just relax and they click everywhere. They still have to be vigilant, and that's the message that we're trying to spread. Because at the end of the day, I think the price of excellence is the ultimate vigilance.
Super interesting. And Ian, I know that translates very naturally to your own perspective on sort of empowering staff as opposed to seeing them as part of the risk. Maybe you could speak about how at SBW you think in a sort of similar line.
Yeah, so I'm completely aligned to what Katerina says there. It's about we know people make mistakes. That's the first thing. So having systems in place that help mitigate those mistakes is great. Tessian being one of those systems. What I'm really keen on is the security, the constant security awareness. So we're running video campaigns, which I think is a really good medium for delivering security awareness messages, and we're complementing that with frequent phishing testing. And the phishing testing, I like the carrot approach rather than the stick approach to phishing testing. The idea is to place various types of emails, and we know that all of us here could probably craft a really good email that will fool our boss into doing something. It's not too tricky, but by putting in front of them various emails that we know are currently being used by attackers and crafting them, we're hoping that we increase the number of people that spot them first of all, and therefore are the first reporters, because somebody reporting an email early on in their in the attack can help us remove it from everybody else and prevent the person that perhaps isn't quite paying attention that day from clicking it. But the other really important thing is that we don't go after people who've clicked on emails. We know people make mistakes, and what we want to do is to give them some immediate training that's fun, that's interesting, that's engaging. It doesn't become a chore to do, and in that way we can see we have seen through our results phishing clicks reducing drastically and phishing reporting getting to a level which is really good for the company and still improving month by month. And I think by doing those immediate trainings for the people that fail, they immediately know what they did wrong, rather than a week later or 2 weeks later coming back saying, you clicked on a phishing email, now you're in trouble, which is just the wrong culture, in my mind, to spread through a company.
Katerina, I can see you smiling, and I know that's because this is a topic that resonates very strongly with your own sort of thinking at Intertrust. I think for me also what I'm hearing from Ian is it's this idea of ongoing training, right? Training is not an isolated activity that you give someone something once and then we have to expect that in every single instance in their working day they remember every single piece of content that you disseminated, both from the phishing standpoint but also actually on the data exploitation side or the accidental data loss side. Does that resonate with the sort of creative ways in which you're thinking about security training at Intertrust as well?
Absolutely. I mean, learning can only be effective if it's ongoing activity, right? So when we try to stay relevant. So we have like annual awareness program, and when we create this awareness program, we also look at the continuity as an aspect. It's not something that you can do in one quarter, then tick the box and the job's done. It is an ongoing process where you have to, and people don't want to be told always that they have to do something. So it's about finding smart ways how to sometimes also bring it from the back door. And we thought that by having something around security every month, it is going to help, and not necessarily has to be a heavy security content that it's time consuming. We have those as well. So for example, we use October as the security awareness month, but some other months, it's the small things that make the difference, right? We'd get 10 minutes of air time in the local town hall to talk about security risks. Try to make it relatable to people. Trying to use like use cases, because that's what gets their attention. Sometimes, send a 5-10 minute short quiz and what Ian mentioned that has the carrot, like a smart symbolic award. People like these things. And it's like through fun ways that can also, ensure that continuity. But then again, the management support. We're trying to also train the trainer so that I think that people copy leadership behavior, and if that voice is coming from the top, it also helps. So we're always asking the local heads and the MDs to also speak about security, talk to their MT, put security at the discussion table, and that does make a difference.
Absolutely. And then Ian, if we sort of look at that from the Tessian perspective and the sort of in-the-moment prompts that you have been deploying to users in order to complement that ongoing work stream, can you talk about how you sort of see those two in conjunction and what the in-the-moment warnings are there to really focus on?
Yeah, I mean, certainly from the defender position and putting up the spear phishing email. So once something's got through our defenses and got all the way to the desktop, our colleagues are the last line of defense. So by putting up a warning in front of them that this email looks suspicious. This looks like a spear phishing attempt, and why? Which is the big important thing, because that's where the education comes. It's provided. It's invaluable. From a point of view of the data exfiltration or the mistakes happening, the Guardian warnings, which are the pure AI based warnings that pop up when you've accidentally put the wrong John in your email, is a great double check. And quite honestly, nobody seems to mind getting the occasional warning, and it really is occasional. And I can see from how people have responded that they've seen again the explanation of why it's warned, and that's so important. It's no good just popping up a message saying don't do this, as Katerina just said. It's the explanation is where the education happens, and being told, well, you've emailed somebody that's very similar to somebody inside, never bothers anybody. And occasionally it does pick up a true misdirected email, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, super interesting, because it's not about stepping up and saying, oh, you've done something wrong, this is an error. It's, as you say, sort of educating people as to why it is that contextually what they were doing in that moment might lead to something dangerous. And Katerina, maybe if we focus on the sort of outbound piece, given the way in which Intertrust focus, when you decided with your different sort of policy changes, whether that was the warning messages or the block messages, how did you sort of measure that step change in behaviour and sort of report that more widely? I think it's a really interesting story.
Look, Tessian is a very powerful tool. We use it to look also how users behavior with emails, right? By nature of our business, we deal with a huge volume of sensitive and confidential data. Even management loves it, right? Because we put the Tessian dashboard in one of our reporting, and then they see some numbers that put things into perspective, and then it helps them take sound decisions. So when we put the Tessian warnings, the overall feedback was very positive. Some users loved it immediately. Some users were not entirely clear what Tessian does for them at the beginning. It's a change, so you need to take the time for that change to be embedded in the culture. But once you put it into perspective, we notice the warnings, they first trigger like, oh, what is happening, and I'm doing something wrong. And then you explain what Tessian does for them, and then it gives them that level of comfort. Now, think about this. We have business users that are working on a tight client deadlines and meeting high demands, and it's stressful. They're sending a lot of emails. I think we use emails even too much sometimes. And if we only tell users they always have to triple check every time they press send, that adds additional level of stress that they might make a mistake, and then that confidential information will end up in the wrong hands. What happens in that cases, I think that mistakes are imminent. But if you tell them that there is something in the background that can help them and warns them that, look, are you sure you want to send this email because you're sending it to the wrong recipient? You might be sending it. That gives them a little bit of a more relaxed way. And I really believe people are more efficient when they're less stressed when doing that job in general. So Tessian, how we see it, it's like it has our back. It prevents you from making a mistake that can have a massive impact for the company. So it's always to know that something or someone has your back. So the overall feedback was super positive. When we moved from warning to block mode of people sending emails to personal email boxes, I think we were one of the first Tessian clients who did that. We expected a bigger pushback, to be honest. And of course, we had some false positives at the beginning, but they get it. Eventually we just say, look, you shouldn't be sending emails to your personal email boxes. That's against policies. And how the behavior changed is that we were monitoring, the top 5 people that had the biggest volume of emails, and then we would go and educate. The same names would never appear in the same report, in the report next week. So, it helped.
Shows it's resonating. Exactly.
Yeah.
And actually you strike on something really interesting there, in that it's ultimately your organizational culture and how you decide to configure. So block was correct for you in that moment, whereas Ian, I know at the moment you guys are using warnings as more of a nudge because that matches up better to the sort of mantra and process that you have in place at SBW. Perhaps as a sort of final piece on this one, you both talked a lot about how the user sees the different warnings and how they get used to that. Ian, perhaps could you talk a little bit more about how you translate that value back to senior management in order for them to understand why it's necessary for you to have this program in place beyond that just sort of individual user reaction at the sort of aggregate level?
Yes, I think it's really good for our senior management to see parts of this. But what I try and do is to roll everything together into. I think your wish may come true in a moment. You'll see why. Yes, to roll everything together into the reporting. So it's not just the results of Tessian responses to emails, etc., but it's also how the phishing stats have worked and how they've integrated and how we've seen differences in reporting and when we see the security awareness messages coming out, trying to merge all that together to produce a coherent a vision of how well we're doing as a security culture. And I know that's always been a really tough thing to measure and to show to senior management the security culture of a company. But when we can show that phishing clicking rates are going down and phishing clicking rates are going, reporting rates are going up significantly, we can see that reductions. We do allow people to send personal emails home, but they justify it. So there's a little challenge there. So if somebody's perhaps doubtful whether what they're doing is legitimate, they get a little prompt to say it, and we do follow up if our scanning of those results shows anything that we want to follow up on. So it's not just one thing that we try and show senior management. It's trying to pull all that detail together, and by showing the number of accidental email that have been prevented, which is a great thing that Tessian shows us, almost justifies Tessian in its own right. But showing that in context against the number of emails that are sent every month gives you an idea of what sort of error rate we're dealing with, and what sort of, as I say, that baseline culture. And that's the thing that I'm trying to get across to the senior management is just, where is our culture going? Are people engaging in the security awareness? Are they getting worse or better at phishing emails? And also, what type of emails cause people are the worst ones? So the ones that often impersonate Microsoft type messages are really difficult. Sometimes you look at those and you think, actually, that looks really absolutely real. Even the email address looks real, and yet it's been caught. It's really quite good. So it's a combination of things. It's not just one aspect.
Makes complete sense. And then, also, as a security professional, if you think an attack looks convincing, God forbid someone who doesn't spend all day every day sort of thinking about these is expected to pick it up. So yeah, thank goodness for Defender, eh? Oh, fab. Well, we're absolutely flying by on time. I've got so many more questions that I wanted to be able to dig into, but I'll make sure we keep to our schedule. I want to say a massive thank you to both Ian and Katerina for talking us through how you think about these problems at your respective organisations. I think it's amazing to sort of step back and see so many common threads from two CISOs sitting in different cities and different countries across the world, but ultimately facing similar challenges and coming together with creative solutions in order to do that. So before I wrap up, maybe Katerina, I'll pass for you to any closing thoughts, and then to Ian, and then we'll go back to Kelly.
Thank you, Robyn. I really appreciate the invite. It was lovely to speak to you and to Ian. I think it's nice to hear that we have some similar challenges and to learn how other CISO are tackling those issues. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the next event of this sort.
Great, thank you. Yes, I've really enjoyed this. It's been a good discussion and nice meeting you, Katerina, as well. I think my final thought on this is that our humans, our colleagues are our last line of defence. We as CISOs owe a great deal to them. Either they're going to lose us our jobs or give us great credit. But if we can do everything that we can to provide the right guidance, the right security awareness, and the right guardrails from software and systems, then I think we're stand a much better chance to win against these external activists, criminals, hackers. That would be my message to go away with.
Yeah, the bad guys and then also the good guys just trying to do their job, right? Putting those guardrails in place in order to help people do their job in a safe way.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much again, both. Kelly, I will pass back to you, but a pleasure to speak to two of our customers again and hearing more about your world. Thank you.